Get this, Larry Fitzgerald wrapped up his pro days, snagging 1,432 passes while dropping only 29. That is a fail rate of literally less than 2%. Here is the wildest stat you will hear today. The guy actually made more tackles on interceptions than he had dropped passes. He was never the fastest dude or the hulking beast, but he was elite where it counted. When he hung up the cleats, he was sitting pretty at number 2 on the all-time yardage list with 17,492, and number 2 in total catches with 1,432. And the kicker? He pulled those numbers while dealing with a revolving door of 21 different starting quarterbacks over 17 seasons. So, how does a guy in that chaotic situation turn into a superstar with hands made of super glue? And where does Fitz really stack up against the immortals of the gridiron? To figure that out, we have got to rewind to Minneapolis, Minnesota, where the story starts. His pops, Larry Fitzgerald Sr., was a big-time sports writer and broadcaster, meaning Larry did not learn football just by watching Sunday replays. Nope, this kid was literally growing up inside locker rooms and press boxes, absorbing the game by osmosis. But the game changer was landing a gig as a ball boy for the Minnesota Vikings. Imagine being 14 years old and clocking into work right next to your absolute heroes. He studied Warren Moon's class, Chris Carter's insane route running skills, and Robert Smith's work ethic up close and personal. But one guy completely mesmerized him, Randy Moss. Watching Moss glide past defenders and snag passes out of the stratosphere turned young Larry into a believer. Moss was not just a player to him, he was the blueprint, the guy Larry wanted to morph into. And Moss was cool about it. Instead of ignoring the quiet kid on the sidelines, he took Larry under his wing with tips and real encouragement. Legend has it, on Larry's prom night, Moss tossed him the keys to his BMW so he could pick up his date in style. Larry brought it back without a single scratch, too. While Moss was busy tearing up the NFL, Fitzgerald was building his own mythos over at the Academy of Holy Angels. He wasn't blowing by people with sprinter speed or bullying them with size. It was all about those mitts. See, his grandfather was an eye doctor who ran him through crazy drills, catching tennis balls in the dark, or focusing so hard on 2 pennies they looked like one. That specialized training gave him superhero-level hand-eye coordination before he could even drive a car. Basically, if the pigskin was airborne, Larry considered it his personal property. His coaches would try to mess him up in practice, chucking terrible wobbly passes into double coverage, and Larry would just vacuum them up every single time. By the time he was an upperclassman, he had piled up over 2,100 yards and 34 scores, cementing himself as the most sure-handed kid in Minnesota history. But there was a snag: his grades were not quite NCAA ready, so he had to take a detour to Valley Forge Military Academy for a year. Once he got that sorted and was ready for the big stage, he took his talents to the University of Pittsburgh. The man did not believe in learning curves. In just his second game as a freshman, he dropped over 100 yards on a ranked Texas A&M squad. Later on, he torched number 3 Virginia Tech for 105 yards and 3 touchdowns, then roasted West Virginia for 159 yards to close the year. Then, at the 2002 Insight Bowl, he put the cherry on top with 88 yards and a score to help Pitt crush Oregon State. He finished that year leading the Big East in basically everything, but 2003 was when Larry Fitzgerald completely broke college football. He kicked off the season destroying Kent State with 123 yards and a hat trick of touchdowns. It was obvious nobody could guard him. For the next 3 months, he went on a rampage. 201 yards versus Toledo, 207 against Rutgers, and finding the end zone in every single game. He set an NCAA record by scoring in 18 straight games. It did not matter where the quarterback threw it, high, low, or behind him. The ball just stuck to him like magic. His catch radius was infinite, and his body control looked like a glitch in a video game. By the end of 2003, he had 92 grabs for 1,672 yards and 22 touchdowns, sweeping the major receiver awards. He was not just the top wideout in the nation, he was arguably the best athlete on the turf, bar none. Yet, in one of the biggest robberies in history, he finished second in the Heisman voting to Jason White. People are still mad about that one. Whatever, the NFL was calling. The only hiccup was the rule saying you need to be 3 years out of high school, and Larry had only played 2 years at Pitt. But because he did that stint at the military academy, he technically met the time requirement since graduating high school. He petitioned the league for an exemption, won the case, and got the green light. Heading into the 2004 draft, every scout knew he was a franchise changer, even if they wanted to nitpick his stats. Sure, his 40-yard dash was not blazing, and he wasn't a workout warrior, but you can't measure heart and hands with a stopwatch. And those hands were legendary. The 2004 receiver class was totally loaded on paper. You had guys like Roy Williams and Lee Evans, but let's be real, there was Larry Fitzgerald, and then there was everybody else. The Arizona Cardinals were sitting at pick number 3, led by head coach Dennis Green. That is the same Dennis Green who watched Larry shag balls as a kid for the Vikings. He knew exactly what he was getting. So, with the 3rd overall pick, the Cardinals snagged Larry Fitzgerald, sealing the deal. Arizona had been a doormat for years, but the second Fitz pulled on that jersey, you knew the vibes had officially changed. He made his NFL debut in Week 1 of the 2004 season against the St. Louis Rams. Even though the Cards took the L, the rookie wasted 0 time showing off, snagging 4 balls for 70 yards. Just a few weeks later, in Week 5 against the Niners, Fitzgerald put the league on notice with his first career touchdown, a 24-yard dime from Josh McCown. Then, on December 19th against the Rams, he made history. At just 21 years and 110 days old, he became the youngest player ever to grab multiple touchdown catches in a single game. Arizona hadn't just found a player, they found their franchise icon. Larry wrapped up his rookie campaign with 59 catches, 780 yards, and 8 scores on a team that finished a dismal 6-10. But it wasn't the stats that turned heads, it was his swagger. Dude studied film like a 10-year vet, grinded like a pro, and leveled up the entire offense just by being on the field. His work ethic was straight-up obsessive. Teammates would catch him staying late to haul in hundreds of passes in the craziest ways possible, one-handed, behind the back, over the head, twisting, falling, you name it. He was so intense, he actually banned the rookies from wearing gloves during the off-season, just so they could build hands of steel like his. That grit paid off immediately in the 2005 season, where Fitz made it crystal clear he wasn't messing around anymore. We're talking 13 catches, 155 yards, and a score in the opener against the Giants. And he kept his foot on the gas. He strung together 7 games with over 100 yards, found the end zone 10 times, and led the entire league with 103 receptions for 1,409 yards. But he wasn't a solo act. Opposite him was Anquan Boldin, who also smashed the 100-catch mark and racked up over 1,400 yards that same year. Fitz and Boldin became just the second wide-out duo in history to drop numbers like that in the same season, joining the legendary Lions pair from the 90s. Suddenly, the Arizona Cardinals, a team usually ignored on highlight shows, had the scariest air attack in football. The squad still stumbled to a 6-10 finish and missed the playoffs, but Larry's ascent was undeniable. He earned his first Pro Bowl nod, locking himself in as one of the game's elite playmakers. What made Fitz so fun to watch was his style. He wasn't a speed demon blowing past guys, he was just completely unguardable. Quarterbacks could just chuck the ball into traffic, and honestly, it didn't matter. He had this superhero ability to elevate, extend those massive mitts, and rip the ball out of the air like he owned it. By the mid-2000s, those highlight reel plays were just a typical Sunday. Kickoff, 2006 against the Niners. Fitz went nuclear for 133 yards on 9 catches, looking ready to take over the galaxy. That was until he hit a speed bump, a hamstring issue in Week 4 that put him on the shelf for 3 games. But 2 weeks after coming back, he absolutely torched the Minnesota Vikings, his childhood team, for a career-high 172 yards on 11 grabs. He closed out the year on fire, finding pay dirt 4 times in his last 5 matchups. The Cards were still a mess at 5-11, but the future was bright because they had something special in number 11. By 2007, things finally started clicking. With Kurt Warner taking the reins and Boldin drawing coverage, Arizona quietly built one of the most lethal passing attacks in the sport. Larry finished that year with a cool 100 catches, over 1,400 yards, and 10 touchdowns. He grabbed his second Pro Bowl selection and earned a rep for having the stickiest hands in the business. People literally started calling him Sticky Fingers. The front office paid the man, handing him a massive 4-year, $40 million extension, and yeah, he was worth every penny. He was the heartbeat of a franchise that had spent decades trying to find itself. The Cardinals were basically written off as irrelevant forever. They hadn't hosted a playoff game since 1947, but Larry was on a mission to change that. His 2008 season was absurd. 96 catches, over 1,400 yards, and a league-best 12 touchdowns. The team finished 9-7, barely sneaking into the dance, breaking a playoff drought that felt like it lasted a century. And once the postseason started, Fitz turned into a monster. In the wild card round against Atlanta, he dropped 101 yards and a score just to warm up. Then came Carolina, where he went God mode, 8 catches, 166 yards, and a touchdown in a total blowout. But the NFC Championship against the Eagles? That's where he became a legend. On the biggest stage, he tied an NFL record with 3 first-half touchdown catches. By halftime, Philly had 0 answers. Fitz racked up 152 yards and 3 scores, dragging Arizona to their first-ever Super Bowl appearance. Their opponent? The heavy-hitting Pittsburgh Steelers. With under 3 minutes left, Warner looked over the middle and found his guy. Fitz snagged the slant, split the defense, and took it 64 yards to the house. It felt like destiny. The Cardinals, led by the quiet superstar with the surest hands in the game, were seconds away from shocking the world. But then, Big Ben and Santonio Holmes pulled off a miracle drive, breaking Arizona's heart with that toe-tap catch in the corner of the end zone. The Cards fell short. But Larry's greatness? Nobody could question it. He posted 7 catches for 127 yards and 2 scores on the world's biggest stage. By the time the dust settled, he had smashed Jerry Rice's postseason records for catches, yards, and touchdowns. Just a truly epic run. I remember watching that Super Bowl and seeing him outrun guys who were supposedly faster than him. But 2009 brought a new challenge. Could he keep that magic going when every defensive coordinator had the same game plan, stop number 11? The answer? They could scheme all they wanted, but stopping Larry Fitzgerald? Good luck with that. The man was relentless. He snagged 97 balls for 1,092 yards and topped the league with 13 scores, but come playoff time, he basically told the world January was his personal property. During that wild-card shootout against Green Bay, a 51-45 overtime thriller, Fitz dropped 2 touchdowns in the third quarter alone. Sure, the Cards bowed out a week later to the Saints team that won the Super Bowl, but the verdict was in. Nobody played big games better than Fitzgerald. Then 2010 hit, and the music stopped when Kurt Warner, the Hall of Famer who turned Arizona into a powerhouse, hung up his cleats. Suddenly, Fitz went from catching perfect spirals from a legend to babysitting throws from Derek Anderson, Max Hall, and rookie John Skelton, a quarterback carousel that kills 99% of careers. Fitzgerald was just built different, though. Despite the absolute mess under center, he still racked up 90 catches, 1,137 yards, and 6 trips to the end zone. After that showing, he inked a massive 8-year deal worth $120 million at the time. Basically unheard of money for anyone not throwing the ball. Man, did he earn that check, hauling in 80 passes for 1,411 yards and 8 scores, turning garbage throws into highlight reel gold. He was averaging a career-best 17.6 yards per grab, absolutely dominating games even when the defense knew exactly who was getting the rock. The next year, though, tested his sanity like never before, as the 2012 Cardinals shuffled through 4 different guys at quarterback. The offense was basically in a coma, dead last in everything, but somehow Fitz still scraped together 71 catches for 798 yards and 4 touchdowns. Now, those stats don't look insane on paper, but given what he was working with, that might have been his greatest magic trick. He faced double coverage on almost every play, snagging uncatchable balls while the rest of the team completely fell apart. Fast forward to 2015, and they decided to switch things up, moving Larry from the outside into the slot. I actually got way smarter because at first, I took it personal, like a demotion. But honestly, it was a promotion. I could still win outside, but I didn't have the inside game mastered when I started. When I first moved there, I was learning, but after a year or two, I still had my outside skills. But now I'd added a whole new tool to my bag, making me a better player. It made me a nightmare to guard because suddenly I could beat you this way or that way. Basically, I think it just helped me evolve into a much sharper, more efficient weapon. He turned into a possession machine in that slot role, logging a career-high 109 catches for 1,215 yards and 9 scores, becoming the youngest guy ever to hit 1,000 career grabs. Arizona finished 13-3 with an NFC West crown, and once the postseason bracket was set, you know exactly who came to play. In that divisional round clash with the Packers, Aaron Rodgers launched a last-second Hail Mary that dragged the game into overtime. The Cardinals got the ball first with a shot to end it, and Carson Palmer rolled out right, flipping a short little pass to Fitzgerald. What followed was absolute cinema. Fitzgerald weaved across the entire field, stiff-arming defenders and breaking tackles on a 75-yard sprint that nearly brought the stadium down. 2 snaps later, he hauled in the game-winning shovel pass, but sadly, the fairy tale ended the very next week against the Panthers. Palmer coughed up the ball 6 times, the offense disintegrated, and Arizona got smoked 49-15. By 2016, Larry's legacy was cemented, seeing as pretty much every other receiver from his 2004 draft class was already sitting on the couch retired. But Fitz, he was still the heart and soul of Arizona. At 33, he led the entire league with 107 receptions, becoming the oldest player in history to pull that off. He was just too intelligent, too disciplined, and too smooth to let age stop him. That season, he joined an elite club of just 12 guys with 100 career touchdowns, and 2017 was just another chapter in the legend. With guys like Steve Smith and Anquan Boldin retiring, Fitz became the old guard of the NFL. But watching him play, you'd never guess his age. On Monday Night Football against Dallas, he tied his career best with 13 catches for 149 yards and a touchdown, then snagged a walk-off winner in overtime to sink the 49ers a few weeks later. By 2018, the walls were crumbling. Injuries, a rookie quarterback in Josh Rosen, and a brutal 3-13 record brought dark times to the desert. Through the disaster, Fitz was the steady hand, remaining loyal to the soil even though he had zero obligation to stay. I knew if I bounced from city to city chasing a ring, I'd lose those deep connections. I'd never build the same quality of relationships that I could by staying in one place for that long. That was the same year he hopped over Terrell Owens for second all-time in receiving yards, sitting right behind Jerry Rice. 2020 was the curtain call. At 37, Fitz fought through the pandemic season and father time. But look at the resume he left on the table. 1,432 catches and 17,492 yards, both second only to Jerry plus 121 touchdowns. A career spanning almost 2 decades without a single season dipping below 50 catches. But here is the stat that sounds completely made up. Out of those 1,432 catches, Fitzgerald is officially listed with only 29 drops. That literally means he had more career tackles, 41, than he did drops, and you cannot manufacture that level of reliability. His franchise records are basically set in stone. Most catches, yards, touchdowns, playoff grabs, and 100-yard games. He wasn't just on the team, he was the Arizona Cardinals. So, where do we slot Larry Fitzgerald in the pantheon of greats? He might lack Jerry's 3 rings, Randy Moss's highlight reel swagger, or T.O.'s chaotic energy. But here is the kicker. Larry did all this while catching passes from 21 different quarterbacks. Despite the revolving door, he still climbed to number 2 in history, and whether he is the greatest receiver ever is always going to be an argument. But if we're talking about who had the best hands in NFL history, debate over its Larry legend. If you dug this story, stick around with NFL Facts. Smash that subscribe button and binge watch more wild NFL facts right here.